welcome to another round of coffee and questions. What's today's topic? Let's talk about shellac and some simple ways that you can actually make shellac, and you can make it yourself, save money as opposed to buying, like let's say a can of this Zinser here, seal coat, which is about a 2 to 1 pound cut. And you can certainly do that, and I have a can of it. One way is if you bought that, you could turn around and just use it straight out of the can. You could stir it up a little bit, use it straight out of the can. Or what I do is I'll turn around and I'll add 50% mineral spirits and 50% of that seal coat. And then when I'm done sanding a project, and I'll show you one here in a little bit, I go ahead and I put on a coat of it, nice thick coat, and use a rag and I wipe it in. I let it dry. I wait a couple hours. You can only wait 15 minutes or so if you want to. It dries incredibly fast. I wait a little bit longer. I denib it. I put on a second coat. I let it dry well. I denib it again. Then I go ahead and I decide on what I want to do for a top finish. It might be lacquer. It might be shellac, more of a pure shellac, or you can keep using this. Nothing wrong with using this. I've put like 4, 5, 6 coats of this on, and with the denibbing in between, and then put on like a top coat of wax, and it looks great. Somewhere between flat and semi-gloss, somewhere right around in there is the kind of finish I come up with, and that works good on a lot of projects. But let's talk about another way you can do it. Now online, I went ahead and I had to find it. I bought some blonde shellac, and this is on sale right now on Amazon, and this is 11 ounces. They look like a bunch of crystals. Now, another simple way to make your own, and you can do a couple of methods, and I'm going to show you both. The down dirty quick way, I can take a container, just enough for like a few projects. I don't mix up a bunch of it at a time, but you can, of course. And I put 2 marks on here. I put a fill line, and I put approximately halfway. Then I take those flakes and I throw them in here to the halfway point. Then I fill it with alcohol the other half of the way. Now I will take like a couple of small nuts, let's say, laying around, and I drop them in here, and then I just shake it up from time to time. And by the next day, 24 hours or so, the shellac has been dissolved. So then after that, that gives me an approximate 2 pound cut, approximately. Remember, down dirty quick way, but it works. Then I strain it out. You can run it through like a t-shirt into another container, a coffee filter or something like that, just to make sure you get out all the debris and crap. And then you're left with, like I said, a nice little container of shellac, for your projects. Approximately a 2 pound cut. You can turn around, take that, and use alcohol and cut it in half again and make a 1 pound cut. So why would I do that? Well, by making the 1 pound cut, whether it's a Zinser or I do it this way, I get better penetration into the wood than I would with a 2 pound cut. Now the other thing is with the 2 pound cut, I find that like myself with wood turnings, I have to wipe it like maybe 1 time, leave it alone, wipe it somewhere else, and don't go back and forth over it, because you'll start to feel it pull. It dries really fast, especially that first coat. Second and third coat, a little less dragging, but you still get it. So, I always go to a 1 pound cut to begin with, and after I put on maybe 2 or 3 coats, I might jump up to that 2 pound cut. So you have multiple ways of doing this. There's no right way or right answer to this, but that's a down dirty kind of quick way. Now let's switch over to a more refined method, okay, which is what I did with this larger container I have right here. Now, what I did is you're going to need a scale. I have a scale, and you're going to need like a coffee grinder or something like that. Both of these are inexpensive, like Walmart or whatever. They're fairly cheap. Now, you can do it a couple of different ways. So let's talk about the first way of doing it. Okay, so you got your scale, you got your grinder. So I put a paper towel on the scale, and then I zero the scale. And then I start putting flakes on top of that until I get to 2 ounces. I get to 2 ounces, I take it off. Now, I put it in here and I create a powder out of it. Now, you don't have to do that if you don't want to buy this. You could leave it wrapped up in a paper towel and then you could smash the daylights out of it with a hammer or something. That works too. Or you don't have to do it at all. It's just going to take longer to dissolve. But I smashed it up using the grinder. Like I said, you can of course hit it with a hammer. And then I put it in a container. And then I turn around and I add 8 ounces of alcohol to it. And I've got containers of alcohol over here. Now that's going to make a 2-pound cut. And again, I use a couple of bolts or nuts or whatever, and I drop them into here. And I shake it. And they say, well, try to shake it every 15 minutes or so. Well, when I made this, I had it sitting out in the shop doing a bunch of other things. Intermittently, I would come over and shake it. And they said, well, it'll take about 24 hours. Well, that's if you're using the whole flakes, not if you've powderized it. It actually, in a handful of hours, I mean, it will totally dissolve into a liquid. And then you have your 2-pound cut here, but this hasn't been filtered. So you'd have to get, or you should get, another container. And you could put like an old t-shirt over the top, or like I said, a coffee filter, and start pouring it in slowly. And that will filter out all the impurities and all the crap that, well, you don't want in your finish. And so then you're left with this, and this is a 2-pound cut. And I write a date on this, and I write a date on the previous container. So what do I think of shelf life? I estimate 6 months, and then you could still use it, I suppose. Maybe it's good for 8 months. It might be good for other things around the shop. But in terms of finishing on these wood projects, I target about 6 months. So I always put a date on these. And when I use this, like in these containers, this one's got a good seal on it. Okay, that's what you want because alcohol will evaporate. But you could turn around with a marker after I pour some out that I'm going to use for the day. I mark the container right here on the side. And when I come back to this in a week or two, if it's gone down just a little bit, we'll add a little more alcohol back to that fill line, and that will give me the same consistency as I had before. But remember, this is also a 2-pound cut. So you can take this, pour some out into another container, add alcohol to it, and make your own ratio. Generally, I don't do anything other than, like I said, 50% alcohol, 50% this 2-pound cut. That I find works really well for me in what I do. What you do might be different, and you might want to use it another way. Some people spray the shellac out of like these little hobby sprayers and stuff. I've tried that. I don't like doing it that way. I prefer applying it by hand. You can also apply it by brush, or like I said, I just take like a folded up piece of cloth t-shirt, because I'm doing this on a wood lathe, so I can very quickly, as I hand turn the piece, I can sit there and I can wipe this. For me, that works out really well. Okay, so then the question goes, well, what if I don't want to make the 2-pound cut? What if I only want to make, you know, like 1.5-pound cut? Well, you can do that too. You use 1.5 ounces of the shellac flakes and you use 8 ounces of alcohol. That'll give you a 1.5-pound cut. But like I said, you're going to want to scale at that point. The down dirty quick method, it works, and cutting that in 50% works, and that'll give you the 1-pound cut, or you can do this, which is, like I said, it's a lot more accurate. That's up to you to decide. Okay, and so I had a comment on the forum when we were talking about this. We were writing back and forth on the forum. I've got a computer, and in between, while I'm waiting for finishes to dry and stuff, I read comments, you know, on the forums and see what other people are doing. And somebody said, look, even with the 1-pound cut, my project, I don't know how big it is they're talking about, it still seems to want to drag on me, and I'll get those lines and I don't like it, and you know, on and on and on. And then I have to do what? Well, you're going to either have to take it, you get alcohol, because it's alcohol based, and a rag, and you can take it off. Or you can use steel wool, and you can steel wool it back, you know, down flush with the wood or whatever you want. But one solution around that I found that works, it works for me, you can take some of that, you can take a certain amount of that 1.5-pound cut, and if you add 1 ounce of mineral spirits to it, because it's kind of got like a little bit of an oily base to it, but remember, mineral spirits evaporate, so it's going to flash off. So if you add just 1 ounce to, like I said, the 3 ounces or so, just add some, you're going to find you can wipe a lot longer, and you can go back and forth over the same area over and over, and it works really well. It's going to take a little bit longer to dry, but I don't care. I'm not in a rush and I'm not in production. So, but that works. And I do that probably a large majority of the time, especially, when I'm cutting it for like larger projects that I have to wipe on. You get a large project, and yeah, you're right, it's going to drag on you unless you can quickly do the one wipe, leave it alone, one wipe, leave it alone. And if you're going around a project where you're trying to overlap 50% and so forth, yeah, you're going to get that dragging. So I like adding the mineral spirits to it. I find that that gives me a lot more control, and you don't need to worry about the lines and so forth. So I hope that helps you. I mean, if you want to try that, try that. I think you'll see, you're going to get a lot better workability out of applying the shellac. Well, if you use the 1 ounce of mineral spirits method, it does tend to want to kind of separate in the container. So with that, or with probably most all of my finishes, I shake them just before I apply it. And so like if I have that mineral spirits in there, I'll shake it, and then I go ahead and I put my rag, I get it wet, and I go ahead and I put it on. And then if you're going to wait several minutes or longer, when I come back to it, I shake it again, I dip the rag in, and I apply it. That works. Especially, like I said, if you put like 1 or 2 little bolts or nuts like at the bottom of something, you shake it, and it makes sure that everything gets mixed real well. Okay, so what's my favorite way of applying it? I don't have a favorite way. It's like a project by project thing. These are the methods that I use and the way that I mix it. Now, what I will do, let's take a project, and I'll pan over and I'll show you here in a minute, where I can use the Zinsser, or I can make my own. It just depends. Like I said, if I want to hurry up and do something, nothing wrong with a Zinsser. So let's say I use the Zinsser, which is a 2-pound cut, and I cut it, and 50% alcohol. Now I have a 1-pound cut. Okay, now we've also shown you how to make the 1.5-pound cut, add a little mineral spirits. It's your choice at that point. Okay, so let's say I put on this Zinsser that's been cut with alcohol 50%. The first coat is going to really absorb and dry fast. It really will. So I put that on, and I don't worry about how it's going on or anything else. I just put it on, and within probably 5 minutes, I mean, that sucker's dry, and I'm ready to put on another coat if I wanted to. But I usually will wait like 10-15 minutes, and then I put on another coat. I don't denib, I put on another coat. Okay, now when that's dry in about 15-20 minutes, I'll turn around and I'll use a 3M pad, or you can use 4/0 steel wool, and then you turn around and you go over it and smooth it out and get rid of the nibs and little particles that have dried on it. And then I turn around and I put on that 3rd coat. Now after the 3rd coat, like I said, I'll let it dry 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, and I just leave it alone, and then I feel it. And if it needs denibbing, I'll go ahead and do that. Now at that point, a lot of times if I'm sticking with shellac, I'll switch over to the container that I made, and I'll go ahead, like I said, I'll pour some into a cup that I know that I'm going to need. I'll add a little bit of mineral spirits to it, the 1 ounce little technique I showed you. And now I'll put on 3 to 4 coats of that, and I'll be letting it dry probably an hour, maybe 2 in between. Now after the final coat, and let's say denibbing with your 3M pad or your 4/0 steel wool in between, the final coat I put on there, I let it sit for 24 hours. I don't do anything. I just leave it alone for 24 hours because I want it to make sure it's thoroughly dry. One of the big things about finishing is everybody wants to hurry up and rush through it, and you'll get okay results, but I mean, finishing is something that takes patience a lot of times. Keys in the preparation, of course, but then you're going to have to sit and you're going to learn how to be patient. I mean, if you want it, a good finish. I mean, the difference between a mediocre finish and an outstanding finish, spending more time in that process. You'll be happier with the results. So I let it sit for the 24 hours. I feel it. I might denib it very lightly with that gray 3M pads, and I'll leave you the links on all this stuff below. They work great. If you don't have it, like I said, 4/0 steel wool very lightly. And then I turn around, I put a good coat of good paste wax on there, and then I buff it out. Finish is fantastic. I really like the results. So these are the different ways, I mean, that I approach using shellac. Now there are a lot of other ways, and finishing can be one of those complicated topics between, you know, measuring and weighing and this percentage of this and this and that, and you know, and then there's so many ways of doing it that people tend to favor, you know, their own ways. I mean, these are the ways that I do it. It works for me on the wood lathe and on turning. Flat work and other things, you know, you might want to approach it differently, or, you know, see what else's technique out there is available. So these are my thoughts on this. I mean, I hope that this helps you. Remember to date your containers. Like I said, I target 6 months, 8 months tops, but usually, you know, around 6 months. I might use it for a seal coat or something if there's anything left, but, you know, no longer definitely than 8 months. Anyway, I'm the Home Handyman. I hope you click subscribe. I hope you keep following me. Enjoy your coffee in the morning, and I hope you got something out of this. Now, in the next video, I'm going to show you the application of using the shellac on the wood lathe. So we'll call this part 1. I didn't want to make each one of these lengthy. Some of you might not even be interested in making your own shellac or using the Zinsser seal coat. But if you are, follow along. We'll use both products on, you know, number 2, you know, part 2. Or I'm over at the lathe and I'm able to show you exactly how I apply it and how the results look. I'll see you folks. Have a great day. Bye-bye.